Não é fácil ser um questionador, mas quem disse que seria fácil evoluir? O DF, tradição em evoluir.
A tecnologia está presente em nossa vida para encurtar distâncias e simplificar tudo. Já parou para pensar nisso? Pensando cada vez mais nessa mudança, nós apresentamos a Estela, assistente virtual da Cruzeiro do Sul Educacional.
Olá, eu sou Estela e vou acompanhar você durante toda a sua jornada acadêmica. Na correria do dia a dia, dar conta de todas as responsabilidades e se dedicar aos estudos não é fácil. Por isso, pode contar comigo. Sabe aquelas idas à CAA? Esqueça! Juntos vamos resolver tudo isso pelo seu celular, tablet ou computador. Assim você pode ter mais tempo para investir no que realmente importa, a sua formação. Vou tirar a máscara rapidinho para falar um pouco do que faço. Agora, em alguns cliques, você terá acesso a vários serviços como boletos com código de barras para pagamento, declarações acadêmicas e financeiras com código de autenticidade, solicitações diversas como certificado de conclusão. E pensando no seu bem-estar e comodidade, preparamos um novo modelo de atendimento presencial que será feito de forma 100% agendada. Ah, mas esse agendamento só acontecerá quando for seguro e autorizado, tá legal? Você pediu mais agilidade e simplicidade no atendimento, e esse é o resultado. Com a minha chegada, 83% dos casos foram solucionados sem a ida até a CAA. Legal, né? Alto índice de aceitação, solução de diversos assuntos, redução de atendimentos presenciais, muito mais facilidade para o seu dia a dia. Mas como eu sou nova por aqui, talvez não consiga ajudar em tudo, mas prometo me esforçar para aprender, ok? Ah, e se você precisar, eu tenho meus colegas no chat humano que estão online de segunda a sexta, das 10 às 20 horas, para qualquer dúvida que eu ainda não tenha resposta, tá bom? Então fazemos assim, eu vou estar sempre pronta para ajudar você 24 horas por dia, 7 dias por semana, enquanto você se empenha e foca nos estudos. Combinado? Bons estudos e muito sucesso!
Nos traços de Oscar Niemeyer, em 1960, o Brasil ganhava uma nova capital, Brasília, que trazia o sonho de um recomeço moderno e de um novo país. 7 anos mais tarde, nascia o Centro Universitário do Distrito Federal, UDF, a primeira instituição de ensino particular da capital. Com a singularidade do pioneirismo e os conceitos da moderna Brasília, o Centro Universitário do Distrito Federal é uma instituição comprometida com a sua história e que cresce diariamente com a sociedade brasiliense. Prova disso é que o UDF oferece cursos de graduação presencial nas 3 áreas do conhecimento, como engenharia, odonto, administração, arquitetura, direito, sistemas de informação, dentre outros, além de cursos na modalidade à distância e de pós-graduação. Aqui no UDF, os cursos de graduação e pós-graduação são referências de qualidade e oferecem conhecimento aos alunos que são comprometidos com seu futuro. Aliando teoria à prática, nossos alunos conquistam posições de destaque na sociedade e no mercado de trabalho. Somos parte de um dos maiores e mais relevantes grupos educacionais do país, a Cruzeiro do Sul Educacional, cujas instituições são destaque em vários indicadores oficiais de qualidade, como o ENAD, CPC, IGC, reconhecimento de cursos, produção científica, entre tantos outros. Estudar no Centro Universitário do Distrito Federal UDF é fazer parte da história da nossa capital. UDF, tão comprometido quanto você. Nós somos a Cruzeiro do Sul Educacional. Acreditamos que o caminho para a mudança é a educação e por isso trabalhamos para oferecer um ensino de qualidade a nossos alunos. Nosso compromisso começa antes da matrícula. Para quem ainda não sabe qual carreira seguir, oferecemos o portal Orienta, com várias informações úteis que vão ajudar na escolha. E para quem já tem diploma ou está no meio do caminho, também uma ajudinha. Aqui você pode colocar em prática o que aprendeu em sala de aula, atendendo a comunidade, sob a supervisão de professores. Legal, né? Falta tempo? Então escolha entre as modalidades semipresencial ou à distância. Com o mesmo conteúdo e diploma dos cursos presenciais, você estuda em casa ou no trabalho. Esse método vai te exigir organização e planejamento na hora de estudar. Tava pensando que era moleza? E por falar em moleza, se o negócio apertar durante o curso, você pode com os programas de financiamento, bolsas de estudo e até auxílio-desemprego. E se você for um bom aluno mesmo, tem mais. Muito legal, não acha? Ah, e além dos vários laboratórios equipados e professores, mestres e doutores que te incentivam, um bom aluno precisa ter à disposição uma senhora biblioteca, como o Sistema de Bibliotecas Cruzeiro do Sul. E se for nosso aluno, você conta ainda com o portal Carreiras, que vai te ajudar muito. Nosso objetivo é oferecer todas as condições para que você seja um profissional de destaque no mercado de trabalho, com garra e determinação para mudar a realidade à sua volta. E então, já decidiu? Venha trilhar seu sucesso conosco aqui na Cruzeiro do Sul.
top of my screen here that say presidential election?
No, just a slide.
Good. Don't pay attention to those. Okay.
He will. Okay, so we are live. Pessoal,
Okay.
boa tarde a todos.
5 minutes. 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 5 minutes
É uma honra todos estarem aqui presentes. Mais uma programação. Hoje, a primeira programação do nosso seminário internacional, que faz parte, evento em conjunto com o 10º Congresso de Pesquisa, Iniciação Científica do DF. E também, deixa eu ver que estou aqui falando, mas não liguei minha câmera, pessoal. Quem faz ao vivo, né? Vamos de novo. Agora sim. Evento que faz parte da segunda jornada de Ciência, Tecnologia e Inovação da UDF. Esse ano, o 10º Congresso da UDF de Pesquisa, a gente está celebrando 10 anos de história e também inovando, uma causa forçada, a gente admite, mas é o primeiro ano que o nosso evento será 100% online, numa adaptação e numa resposta rápida aos eventos da pandemia, e com a realização desse segundo seminário internacional. Contextualizando para vocês, pessoal, e eu combinei já isso com o nosso palestrante, a única parte dessa fala em português vai ser essa breve apresentação. Então, há tempos que nós já queremos fazer palestras totalmente em inglês, inserindo, inclusive, uma das propostas da colaboração entre a UDF e a Bioenergy, é que possivelmente uma disciplina ou algum curso possa ser dado em inglês pelo Larry, e isso vai levar, obviamente, a aprofundar os conhecimentos, habilidades em outras línguas, e faz parte do processo da pesquisa, uma vez que a linguagem científica universal é o inglês. Tá feita essa apresentação, eu vou estar conduzindo a fala, as perguntas. Vocês podem fazer perguntas no chat de vocês, eu vou pegando essas perguntas e vou passando aqui para uma outra sala onde eu estou com o nosso palestrante. Tá? E o Felipe também vai colocar o link para que vocês possam depois se inscrever e receber a certificação. Mas, perdão, eu espero que vocês aproveitem essa oportunidade. Eu acho que todos os eventos que nós fizemos até hoje será o primeiro evento, a primeira fala totalmente em língua estrangeira, sem transmissão, então transmissão teremos, né? E a versão depois gravada, tentaremos colocar uma legenda para quem quiser assistir posteriormente. Mais uma vez, obrigado pelo interesse no tema. Eu vou fazer a apresentação rapidamente do Larry, obviamente agradecer ele. Então, o senhor Larry, ele iniciou sua carreira nas Forças Armadas dos Estados Unidos, tendo estado na vanguarda do desenvolvimento e na realização de novas tecnologias por mais de 3 décadas. Como engenheiro inovador, o trabalho de Larry incluiu o programa do ônibus espacial da NASA, que mais tarde levou a patentes de tecnologias que são usadas em todo o mundo na indústria de comunicações sem fio. As inovações que o Sr. Larry trabalha agora se estendem à produção de energia verde e a primeira implementação comercial da tecnologia de células de combustíveis de hidrogênio no Brasil, projetada para fornecer energia elétrica limpa e confiável em qualquer lugar do Brasil. Foi com isso, com esse intuito que o Larry, o que ele vai falar aqui hoje, trouxemos uma proposta, e então a Bioenergy era a primeira empresa privada que estabeleceu uma cooperação científica com o DF de fomento à bolsa de iniciação científica, e por isso o Larry aceitou o nosso convite para falar sobre esse tema. Então, Larry, thank you for accepting our invitation, for doing this speech for us, and feel free to have as much time as you want to take up. I'll take the questions at the end, and I know you understand a little bit of Portuguese by reading, so it will be good. Thank you once again. It's now with you.
Okay, thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to address UDF and the audience. And I think what we have to present today is pretty entertaining and pretty informative, actually. And I think one of the things we really wanted to touch on is what happens next in Brazil in terms of energy and energy technology. And I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because there's a lot of information. So if you look at Brazil, I hear a lot of talk. While living here in Brazil, I hear a lot of talk about some of the negative things that make up the Brazilian landscape. But in reality, Brazil is actually what I would refer to as a major economic powerhouse. And driving all of that is energy. I mean, think about it. We're the world's largest sugar exporter, coffee exporter. We build airplanes. We build cars. Anything you can imagine that drives an economy, Brazil has. And when you look at the executive summary on YouTube or something, you can do a pause and just kind of look at all of the neat things that Brazil is really, that really makes up Brazil. And driving most of that is energy, electrical energy. And there's some notable things about Brazil's electrical energy sector in total. The first bullet item there is that Brazil demands about 485 terawatt hours of energy. Now, what's a terawatt hour? Essentially, I'm holding in my left hand a 40-watt incandescent light bulb. Now, imagine roughly 10 trillion of these running for an hour. Not billion, but trillion running for an hour or lit for an hour. That would represent 400 terawatt hours, okay? And that increases about 3% per year. And about 3% per year. So if you can imagine, it's 4 terawatt hours or almost 5 terawatt hours this year, then next year it'll be 3% more and then 3% more. And so it's a very difficult thing to keep up, essentially. Now, Brazil has actually done a very good job with renewable energy. If you think about it, 72% of the energy that's produced in Brazil is of renewable resources. And compared to countries like China and the United States, Brazil is very, very small in terms of its output of CO2 per megawatt hour or per millions of watts per hour. Okay, to give you an idea, China produces 760 kilos of CO2 per megawatt hour, as compared to Brazil only producing 104 kilos of CO2. Now, very small component, relatively speaking, is non-renewable. That's natural gas, coal, and other things. Now, that's the good news. The bad news is, we'll get to the bad news in a second. Now, just like most other countries, Brazil actually uses a distributed model for moving electricity from the point where it's actually generated to your home. So that little home that you see there on the right, that's Bernardo's home. And the power plant all the way over to the left is where the power is actually generated. And as I sit here in Brasilia, I can tell you that no energy at all is actually produced in Brasilia. It's all piped in from somewhere else or shipped in from somewhere else. And this is actually an issue for most states, actually, where they just don't produce any of the electricity or a very small amount of the electricity that they actually consume. So obviously this 150-year-old model is challenged, especially here in Brazil, where most of the energy, the green energy, is produced in the Amazon basin. But before we get to that, we'll talk a little bit about some other green energy initiatives that Brazil is actually pushing. And again, here we are, Brazil being number 8 in the world in terms of install capacity of wind power. Now, be very careful about the term install capacity versus actual energy production. Okay, install capacity means essentially this is how much we have installed, and under the absolute best of the best circumstances, Brazil will produce 17.2 gigawatts of, or have 17.2 gigawatts of capability. So what that means is that all of these windmills are going at peak velocity, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we both know that that's highly unlikely. Okay. Likewise, if we go to solar, and I love this slide. This slide is actually it's an aerial view of a solar energy farm that's in Bahia. I think Fortaleza or Bahia. Bahia. We'll call it Bahia. And of course, solar. We have install capacity and actual energy production, and the two are always different. So when we talk about install capacity, what that means is that it's absolutely sunny everywhere where there's solar for the entire 8 hours a day. Okay. Now, this picture is pretty meaningful because if you notice, it's actually a cloudy or hazy day. So all of those megawatts of energy production or install energy capability isn't working at peak. That's probably working at about 50% of its peak capacity. And that's just based upon what I can see in the photo. Now, again, solar has another problem. It only works during the day. At night, there's no energy production whatsoever. So it's cyclical in that respect, and it's also cyclical from the standpoint that it only produces sunlight. It only produces energy during days of sunlight. Case in point, we recently did a study of a location in Breves, which is in Pará. And right now, there's plenty of sun in Breves. As of next month through March, every day rain. In fact, for solar power generation, it's pretty much zero for the next between December and say March, and then the weather starts to change a little bit, and so installing solar there just didn't seem like a logical thing to do. So this brings us to the lion's share, if you will, of Brazil's energy production. So there's only one country in the world that produces more green hydro energy than Brazil, and that's China. And so this is great for Brazil. And this is probably the cleanest of the clean energy at this point. But it does come with two problems. Number one, most of the hydro dams or the hydro energy production is in what we call the Amazon basin. That is in the Amazon region. And number two, it's highly dependent upon, again, atmospheric conditions, just as wind and solar are dependent upon atmospheric conditions. I want to take you back to the year 2015. We were having a drought back then. My office was in right near Shopping Morumbi, and I can say there were probably 10 days out of the summer months when our buildings just lost power altogether, and we just went home. Essentially, we were going through a drought period, and there wasn't a lot of energy. A lot of energy being produced by the hydro dams because the water level was low. And of course, we need to have water flow in order to generate hydroelectricity. You know, the water traverses these tubes. These tubes have turbines that get turned by the water, and that's how energy is created. So if you have a low water condition, there isn't enough pressure to turn the turbines, and of course, or the pressure is reduced, and therefore not as much energy is produced. So during the summer months of 2015, we were actually using, as a country, more energy than we were generating. Okay. The other part with with all these being in the Amazon basin is that they are thousands of kilometers away from the two largest load centers, as we call them. The two largest cities in Brazil that require the most energy are Sao Paulo and Rio. And each of those is thousands of miles, thousands of kilometers away from where the energy is actually being produced. Okay? So having said that, yeah, this is green energy, as with wind, as with solar, but all of them are highly dependent upon atmospheric conditions in order to be successful or to be effective or to be reliable. Okay. Next slide. So, Anil, another Bureau of Mines and Energy, has been very proactive with creating legislation that helps what we call distributed energy generation. So distributed energy generation is simply bringing the point of energy generation closer to the point of where it's being consumed. That makes sense. So in other words, if you can see here, the solar array is closer to the home, and the home is consuming the electricity. Okay, so the electricity doesn't have to flow thousands of kilometers to the consumer or to where it's being consumed. So we understand that trying to solve the energy demand problem isn't going to get solved by building more and more electrical dams, okay? Or hydro dams. So one of the most promising technologies that we're using today is called hydrogen. Now, hydrogen is one of the most plentiful elements in the universe. In fact, even the sun is made out of mostly hydrogen, and it's the lightest. It's clean. It's yeah, it was discovered nearly 100 years ago, and only until now have we really gotten to a point where we can harness it economically to deliver electricity closer to home. Okay. Now, how does that work exactly? When we're creating energy from hydrogen, essentially the hydrogen comes in to what we call a fuel cell. Okay, and the fuel cell is like a battery. Okay, on one side there's oxygen, on the other side there's hydrogen, and the two marry together to create electrical energy. Now, the good news here is that there's absolutely no pollution whatsoever. There's no noise. okay, you'll have some cooling fans for the unit. And these units can actually be very small. That is the size of something that would fit in your briefcase if you carry a briefcase, or your backpack. Or they can be as large as a 40-foot container. And the difference being, the larger the fuel cell, the more power output. So let's take a 40-foot container, for instance. In that container, I can produce enough energy to power 1,000 homes over the course of years. Okay? And that 40-foot container would fit in a tennis court very easily. So this is one of the more promising solutions, and it's actually coming down in price worldwide. So it's actually affordable pretty much everywhere now. And this is actually one of the projects that UDF is engaging with BioEnerge, and BioEnerge will take a kind of a leadership role in helping the curriculum come together, and will source an actual fuel cell for the use for the use of this project. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Now, as I mentioned before, fuel cells have been with us for many years, and they're used in many different applications. In fact, if you pay very close attention to the bus, the green bus in the lower left-hand corner, that is actually in Sao Paulo. They did a trial probably 5 years ago now to begin using hydrogen-fueled buses. Okay, this data center here is actually stood in this data center, and it's in Seattle, Washington, and this is Microsoft. So boats, satellites, planes, cars, motorcycles, even all of these things are used to use hydrogen fuel as a energy source or energy production mechanism pretty much all over the world. Okay, this one here at a hospital in California is actually used for backup power, and of course train mobility. Okay, and so this is the project that that we're pursuing here in Brasilia, actually, and using some of the biogas that's actually spewed into the atmosphere at a landfill pretty close to the UDF campus. Now, when we talk about landfill, essentially all of the trash and things that you put in your trash every day, they get shipped to a location and covered with dirt. Okay. Now, all of the organic material that's in that trash creates a methane. We call it biogas or methane gas, and the methane is actually flammable. So we have to drill holes into the earth to allow that gas to escape. Now, bad news is that methane is actually a greenhouse gas. So it's actually polluting the atmosphere. So you've used it, you've thrown it away, and it's still polluting for the next 20 years. But that's what we've lived with for years. So what we've been able to do as an industry is to tap into that gas that's going out into the atmosphere, siphon it in or introduce it into what's called a fuel cell. This is actually a fuel cell here. See, not very big, of course. And that fuel cell essentially removes the hydrogen from the rest of the gas material, turns it into electricity, and it pays for itself. You have a much cleaner environment, and it can actually be done pretty much anywhere. Okay, Think about how many landfills there are around the country. Hundreds. And this can actually be done with when you have large cattle farms. Imagine all of the methane that's released from the cow waste or the farm waste, we'll call it that. Okay. So this is really how it all works. These tubes are drilled into the trash, into the landfill, and the methane gas escapes and gets pushed into or sucked out and pushed into the fuel cell, and it's actually cleaned and filtered, and it's essentially used to create energy. Okay. Ordinarily, these landfills are just sitting there producing more methane gas than most of us can imagine, and just polluting the atmosphere. Oftentimes, what we do is we burn it. It's called flaring. Okay, so as the methane gas is being emitted into the atmosphere, we ignite it as an industry, and it burns as it leaves the escape tubes. Again, that's creating one greenhouse gas with another greenhouse gas. Okay. So we believe, and there's there's a lot of evidence to support this. We believe that Brazil will soon begin to catch up with other countries that do this ordinarily, and and we're collaborating with academia, meaning UDF, the community and government, and industry as a whole, and that is to use this UDF platform as the first, and certainly provide a pathway for more and more of these fuel cells to be deployed all over Brazil. There's no reason why we cannot deploy these any and everywhere in Brazil. And again, it's clean energy. It reduces the CO2 emissions of these sites that we use every day. And in doing so, we create a different class of jobs. Now, going back just a few years ago, when I graduated from school, here I was standing shoulder to shoulder with hundreds of other engineers. And after school, we were standing there thinking, okay, now where do we work now? What do we do? And that's not unusual. That's certainly the case with most people that are newly graduating from school. They graduate with these wonderful degrees and no real outlook on where to take their knowledge and background. So that was one of the things that we sought to address by collaborating with UDF, and that is to build a group of knowledgeable and capable people that have been involved with things like fuel cells or radio transmissions of energy. That's another thing we haven't spoken of yet. But again, these are things that exist today. And Brazil was a little late in getting to the party. But now that you're here, the industry will need people like you and others in operations and maintenance, the legal field. There are lots of lawyers involved in managing and architecting deals for energy consumption, energy transmission, things of that nature. And then, of course, you need the engineers who will design and implement these systems around the country. Okay, so everybody has a what I like to say, a dog in the race, and that is academia, community, government, and certainly industry. Okay? If I'm speaking too fast, can you raise your hand? Okay, all right, I'll slow down just a little bit. Actually, I can't see you. So just to give you an idea, we've done a few cases, I've highlighted a couple of quick case studies that I'll talk about. Here's Coca-Cola plant, and they actually use these for, this is 1 megawatt or 1 million watts of power that they use to augment the energy that's required for a Coca-Cola bottling plant. Okay, or the next one. This is in South Korea, where this is 3, 6, 9, 12 megawatts or 12 million watts of energy that's being produced for a town. And all of this is green energy. The only output in terms of exhaust is water vapor. Yeah, by the way, when you look at fuel cells, they don't, any energy producing, almost any energy producing element produces some sort of waste material. In this case, fuel cells produce heat and water vapor. That's it. Nothing toxic, nothing nothing to be afraid of. Again, the hospital we talked about before. So again, this one actually gives a little overview of what it actually saves, and it's a television station, and it says this fuel cell generates cleaner power, helping save 4.2 million gallons. That's roughly 16 million liters of water, greenhouse gas. It's equal to removing 114 cars, blah, 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 okay? And of course, Google. Everybody knows Google. So again, these are widely deployed around the world, and it's our goal to help Brazil begin deploying them here, beginning with UDF. So I have about 10 more minutes or so to address any questions or whatever that you may encounter, and or you may have, and certainly ask in Portuguese or English, and I'll do my best.
Thank you, Larry, for a great presentation. I think it was quite enlightening for this thematic that is really important matter for us in Brazil. And I think you addressed all the issues concerning possible energy crisis. So I have some questions. I have some of mine as well. One from the Josemara, she's asking if, besides saying that your speak was really reaching, he asked us that if we have a currently energy crisis in Brazil.
And yes, the answer to that is yes, but it is cyclical. So it all depends on the atmospheric conditions at the time. It simply means if we're having a drought condition, we're not going to be able to make or generate enough energy to supply the entire country. And we saw this back in 2015, where we were having these, what we call rolling blackouts. That is, the distributors decide which cities they're going, or which areas they're going to cut the power on, because there just isn't enough power to provide enough energy to for air conditioning, lighting, and all of those things. So the answer to the question is yes. And remember, there is about a 2 to 3% increase in demand every year, and that's a compounded. That's a compounded number. So here's a question here that I like, and it says, are they high-paying jobs?
There are two questions in one. So the first question, I think we can do both together. What type of future jobs do you see in this area?
First question is, what types of jobs? As I mentioned before, when you deploy something like this, there are people in the legal field that are specialists with energy. We have those people now, in fact. And and of course, when you have many of these, there are all sorts of what we call power purchase agreements. So that is where the distributor purchases power from the owner of the fuel cell or the generation plant. It doesn't necessarily have to be fuel cell. It could be wind, could be solar. There are lawyers that put together those types of agreements. Now, when you consider the availability and ease of use of fuel cells, obviously there'll be many, many more of these. I think, in my opinion, every landfill in Brazil should have some fuel cell, just simply because it's easy energy, and it's energy that actually removes pollution from the environment versus adding pollution to the environment. Okay, and so certainly legal people, and of course there are the operations people, and then there are the engineers and people that design these infrastructures. So certainly at least three classes of well-paying jobs. I can't begin to know everything about what those jobs will demand, but again, those first employees will be able to demand a lot because there's so few of you. Everything in life we do is demand generated. So when there are a few people, obviously the demand is greater, and of course wages are probably greater. And then when there are a lot of people, and this is true with anything, the wages scale. So here's a good question. When do you think?
Go ahead.
Okay, so we believe, and there's again very good reason to believe, that after UDF has demonstrated it here in Brazil, and I'll sidetrack this a little bit. We've learned over time that usually Brazil isn't a first adopter of technology. I go back to the cell phone, for instance. When I had my third cell phone, Brazil was just getting its first set of cell phones. And that's both good news and bad news. The good news is that once technology comes here to Brazil, it's already been tested. Usually the pricing for that technology has gone down quite a bit. So it's already been tested. We understand how it works. And so, again, I think after we get the first grid scale, is what we call it, generation equipment into UDF, certainly the other organizations, both government and private, will invest in that type of technology also. So And then the next year, certainly within the next year, you'll see, Me Too organizations jumping in. Okay, let's see. I'm trying to read some of these.
I got them. I think I copied them here. So there's somebody.
Right.
I have a question as academic and for research. So the idea of combining academic research with industry is a thing well done in the US and other parts of the world. So what do you think, and what are your expectations for this type of partnership that we are starting to do here in UDF, and maybe we can amplify this with other companies? And because I think it's for the student, the depth of knowledge that he will be having, it will be huge.
Right, and that's exactly my expectation. And I like to say good knowledge is contagious knowledge. In other words, I learned something great, and I can't wait to tell someone else, or I can't wait to exercise that new knowledge somewhere where it's helpful. Good example, everybody in the world knows who Cisco Systems is. The company that makes your set-top box for cable. They make your routers, little routers, big routers. Well, that's a company that actually started in a university, Stanford University. And in fact, I know a couple of the professors that ran that organization, just like you, just like you run this organization, Bernardo, Dr. Bernardo. And likewise, the sky is really the limit.
Right. Let me see if we have any more questions here. I think that was it. Guys, do you have one or two more questions for Larry? Not, I'll still have one more.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll do mine. If here's another one, we jump forward. Okay, so the idea is good to combine academia, research, and the industry. What do you think is the biggest challenge for this process? The thing that is the most hard to do? Because we are talking for quite time, and things take time and to adjust. But in your view, as a company man, what do you think it's the most challenging aspect of this type of agreement and this type of project, combining project?
I think the most challenging piece will be the initial piece, and that is to collaborate with the university to engage the energy distributor. In this case, it's SETI. Certainly engage SETI, help them understand that this is something that even they will have a potential of using at some point in the near future. And the rest of it's pretty technical, and technical I mean in terms of where do we put it, how do we connect things to the grid. Those boxes that we saw actually connect to the power grid. So imagine having a generator sitting out at the landfill, and it connects to power lines, and it pushes 1 megawatt or half a megawatt, half a million watts of energy into the electrical grid. Okay, and those types of things, helping the distributors understand what their responsibilities are or what their requirements are, and so that'll take some. That's a learning experience for everybody for the first time, and as we get better at it as a industry, it'll repeat itself and get easier and easier as we go through implementation number 2, 3, 4, and 1,000.
Nice. Gary, I would like to thank you once again. Probably tomorrow or by the 6th, we will have the final results of the projects submitted to our first collaborative edital. I'm really excited to engage with this project with Bioenergy, with you. I hope that you can deliver other speeches, other lectures for us here in the app. I think that the students benefit a lot with that, this experience. I practice my English, so that is good.
Well, the next one I'll do in Portuguese. How's that?
All right, good. So,
I think I did that the first time too.
It will be good for all of us. So I want to thank you once again in the name of UDF, in the name of our Dean, Professora Beatriz, and welcome you to our scientific program for the next days. If you want to see any lecture, be my guest, and thank you for your availability.
Oh, and thank you for your attendance, everybody. And again, if you have any questions when you wake up tomorrow and have questions, feel free to ask them or funnel them through to me, and I'll certainly respond to them pretty quickly.
Oh yeah, there was one question. One of our questions was if you could give the slides, your presentation. If you could share the presentation or some of part of it, of the data.
It's going to cost you a beer, but I'll do it.
That's fine. That's great. Right. Thank you, Larry. We have 50 people here in this chat room and a couple more on the other one. So thank you, everybody that is watching us here and there in the YouTube. And I hope you guys see you guys in the next lectures. Larry, once again. Thank you.
Too. Ready. Bye. Have a great afternoon.
All right.